course, you're the interviewer, but like my question is,
I give everybody one question.
Yeah, everybody gets one question. What are you seeing? Because what I really feel from you when I look at your interviews, when I look at your Twitter feed, is like you have a sort of a relentless pursuit of the truth right now. You're willing to criticize any and everyone. You're willing to just say, like, CNN got it wrong here, Fox News got it wrong here, Fox News got it right here.
Yeah.
So, and I really appreciate that. What are you seeing, on the right in terms of people that are doing that I can point my friends to and say, because I can point my friends to you and just be like, this is great. We got the gay Jewish male losing himself as a liberal, wants to be there. He's really fair. Like, go check him out, and there's traction. Yeah. Who else is doing this right now that I can point out? So
I think that if you want to show somebody what a good conservative is, like a conservative who makes consistently logical sense, and who isn't going to just drub you over the head endlessly, I think Ben Shapiro is the best example of that. We absolutely have our differences, policy-wise and that kind of stuff, and we actually agree on a lot of things too. But I think he knows what he's talking about, and he's not doing things for points. So you'll see him call out Trump as often as he calls out the left. In a way, he actually calls out Trump more than I do. My feelings with Trump are, because of the level of hysteria that everyone is putting out there, that I've tried to control my hysteria, because I don't think it helps. Everyone's doing it. So, for example, he's been president now for
75 days.
About 80 days or so. And it's like, I actually don't know of major things that he's done to be hysterical about. So, like cutting things like the art stuff that he cut. He cut like $800 million from the humanities, something or other. Now, I love art. Yes. I got some good art around here and in the house, and I know artists, and my sister's an artist. The idea that the government has to fund art, and that we have to just involuntarily be taxed to give money to that, I believe that if that disappeared, that it wouldn't hurt art. It might help art, because part of being an artist is having to deal with the struggle. And perhaps that when the government does it, then the things that get to the museums are really because of political connections and financial connections. I don't know about all of that. I'm not an expert in this field. But some of those things, when people say, he's cutting all of this stuff. Now, if you're going to cut Meals on Wheels that people absolutely need, and we don't know yet that private charities will come in. That's also the rub with that people always say, well, no, private charities aren't going to do it, but we have to give them a chance to do it too. So that's why I haven't been too hysterical. I don't sense we're going to war with Russia, but if the Democrats were in, we might be, because they seem to think we've installed a fake Russian president. So, he's been fined for the gays. There was all this gay hysteria. Did you know they canceled the gay pride parade in LA this year? Yeah. It's going to be a protest instead. But what has he done against gay people? He got a standing ovation talking about gay people at the convention. Allow me to refill your water.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yes,
would
we're
you,
very special.
if you were like, because you're such in this middle ground, it's interesting. Like, if you're kind of looking around at this budget and you're seeing all this defense spending that's kind of popping up, and you're seeing money coming away from the arts, like, do you think that that's a good move for us, or would you be like, maybe we can still do Meals on Wheels and do a little less in the military? Like, what do you think about that appropriation?
I mean, so first off, again, I'm not an economist, so I can just give you the broad sense of what I think is basically right. It's a spending issue. So I had Austin Peterson on yesterday. I think actually the interview is going to air after we do this, so it's a little confusing, but you're right, it's very Back to the Future. But he ran as a libertarian candidate, lost to Gary Johnson, and that whole thing was a disaster, but that's for another show. He was saying that just start trimming pennies off everything across the board. So that when you go for the arts or you go for Meals on Wheels and people see you hatchet that thing, it adds to the hysteria, right? So if you're somebody on the left and you see Trump do that, it's like he's
the big splash. It's a trigger.
He's just going for the trigger, and then you go hysterical. Then the right base goes, you see how we triggered these hysterical lunatics, and the snowflakes are melting and all that stuff. So what Austin was saying was basically just start trimming little bits each year, and that what you realize is, the government, they do all these crazy things where they have to spend all their money, or their budgets don't. I mean, Hollywood does this kind of thing too.
If we don't spend it, we don't get it back, so we just dump it.
Right. So they keep making these Michael Bay. I don't know what your feelings about him. These movies keep getting bigger and more explosive, and they don't get any better. In my humble opinion.
I think you're not alone there. By the way. You're all right. You're all right.
I used to love the Transformers. I grew up on, you probably grew up on the Transformers
Man. I mean,
too.
you and I are the same age. That was my jam.
Yeah, everything that I believe I learned in the
Why can't Optimus Prime be president?
I would vote for Optimus Prime. He turned Optimus Prime into a complete psychopath. He used to be moral, decent guy.
He was forthright. He had that nice, solid, deep voice you want to listen to. You know?
Great voice. Anyway, so something about these little incremental things across the board. Yeah, could we cut 20% of our military spending probably tomorrow? Now, a lot of people would be upset with that, and it would probably do a lot with jobs, but little, just slowly being like, guys, this year we're cutting the whole thing 3%, and we're going to try it again next year, and is all hell going to break loose?
Yeah.
Probably not. So I would be for something like that.
Yeah, I don't see that happening for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, because it kind of sounds too sensible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, who would come in? That's part of the problem right now, right?
Yeah.
That if you come in with a sensible answer,
yeah,
people go, "What the hell is this guy talking about?"
What's the incentive? I don't know. I guess I just don't understand that. You know, I mean, I look at a lot of the oil pipeline stuff, and it's like, this is jobs creation, and then I'm like, well, if the facts that I'm reading are true, there's a lot of these temporary jobs, but it's like, is it really only 35 permanent jobs that we're creating here? And so, what is your initiative in lifting these restrictions? Is it really about your deep level credo that government should be backed off, or are you just standing behind that so you can get some support from some of these oil guys? And I'll never be able to understand that. And I feel like a lot of people in my position are feeling that way. In all fairness, I think that I'm willing to give a little more attempt to listen and hear, where a lot of most liberals that I know are just like, oil money. He's just taking his oil money, and he's saying it's for jobs, and he's saying it's for deregulation, but that's bullshit. Yeah. You know? Well, what do you say to that? Like, what is the answer to that? I don't know.
I don't know exactly what the answer is, other than things are probably a little more complex than what
just taking the bribe.
Right. Yeah. You know, I see this on both sides. Yeah. You know, a Democrat does something that the Republicans don't like, and then Republicans will tweet out, "Well, he took $2,000 from the," and then they do it the other way too, and it's like, I'm pretty sure they're not being bought off for $2,000 now. When you know what I mean? Like, it's not $2,000. Yeah. Now look, at the end of the day, if Goldman Sachs is giving Hillary $100,000 for a speech or whatever it was, I think maybe it was $250. Yeah. It probably has a little something to do with influence, you know? But I would say even beyond the money, it's just the collusion of all of these people going to, you know what this is like in Hollywood even, like all these people going to the same parties, being around the same people. Everyone likes to take a picture in front of the step and repeat 100%. With the celebrity, with the politician.
Some of it may be subconscious, like honestly.
Hugely. I don't think they realize it, you know, when they're doing it. But that's actually a great segue to just Hollywood in general related to all of this. So as you've been talking about this, you've mentioned sort of your friend circles and things like that. Are you privately getting pushback from people?
So I'm getting mostly really positive responses when they talk about the theory, 30,000-foot theory. Let's reach across the aisle. Let's focus on what we share as opposed to our differences, and let's try to build bridges. Okay, that is very hard to malign. No one really gets upset about that, but that's the base level, you know. Then there's like the next level when I sort of, as opposed to tweeting out a damning tweet for cutting Meals on Wheels, but send out like, so a genuine question for conservatives out there who support this. Do you really believe that the private sector is going to come in? Do you think that hopefully they'll come in, but I kind of don't care if they don't because I'd rather put the money somewhere else? There are a couple of people who say to me like, why are you dipping your toe in the waters of enabling here? Why don't you use your voice to just say, these are old people who need food and need attention, and we need to support that, and so I understand that.
So it really comes down to intentions, right? Because your intention is to really figure out what people are thinking.
100%.
And it sort of goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. There's no way of knowing unless, if the government stopped doing that, would someone step in?
Would someone step in?
And would they not? And then are we willing to deal with the ramifications if they don't?
And for my choice, like, I would rather not take that risk. I would rather know for sure that like the government is putting the money there, and I also don't fully trust that if people get their money back, trickle down, that they're going to actually give. That's just me being a little probably cynical, but at the same time, that's why I'm trying to run these little test model campaigns to see, again, I'm not saving the world right now. I'm turning $10,000 of my own dollars into $40,000. It's not putting a dent in anything. But if the microcosm there can work and I can get some data that says like, holy shit, I didn't, like you might believe, I didn't realize how much people would really give from the private sector when they know it's not happening from government. And the conservatives were not just hiding behind that. They really will do it. Or vice versa. You know what? They just say that they wanted to give from the private sector, but they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know yet, you know? But if I can figure that out and get some data on that, I think that there's possibility to do some bigger things. And in my mind, again, this is thinking way far ahead, but like, if we can provide this bedrock of safety, so that says like, okay, Democrats are in power, they're going to tax the shit out of everybody, and they're going to give to HUD, they're going to give to the arts, they're going to overgive. It's going to be not fully efficient. As a liberal, I'm willing to accept that something might not be efficient. That doesn't mean I should pull the rug out from under it. I'd rather have a non-efficient thing than a non-entity. So that's going to happen then. Okay. Now there's a conservative in power. We're cutting all those programs. You, sir, are saving 8 to 10% on your taxes. I want you to give half of that back efficiently into those programs, and we're still going to keep those programs afloat. So that basically, plus or minus where the money's coming from, we're kind of juggling these things and keeping them afloat.
You're a social scientist.
I'm a social scientist,
yeah.
And my true belief in all of this, and it's just based on my own experience, is that giving is infectious. And that once you start to open your eyes to this space, there's a great book called Strangers Drowning that's about what happens when you enter this space and how it is so infectious, in fact, that it can destroy you once you start to realize how many people could use help. And it's stories of people who literally just give away everything they have because they got too caught into it. I have conversations with my wife constantly where she's like,
not
don't
everything.
put me in the, don't make me the asshole who has to stop you from giving. Like, put the brakes on a little bit here because we can get a little bit crazy, you know? But when I just know when I talk to people who have gotten involved and they see where that dollar goes, that you start to realize, oh my God, I can do so much good with this. So my hope is that, you know, eventually we could depend on the private sector to be a baseline giving perennial in the event that we have a conservative government who wants to cut those programs. Yeah.
What about just the general morals that we get from Hollywood? As a guy that makes movies, you make movies literally at every level of movie making, that people, you know, there's a certain segment of society that thinks we should get morals, or whether we should or shouldn't, we do. One way or another, we do get a certain moral code from movies. And I think a lot of people think there's like secret meetings in Hollywood where they're sitting around. I mean, people really believe this, that they're sitting around going, what can we push? Now, I see a lot of the social justice that they push that I don't like. I mentioned to you before we started that I just finished Transparent with your brothers on. I just finished it last night. And when I started watching it just 10 days ago or something, I thought it was going to be social justice palooza. I really did. But it wasn't. They actually pushed back on it, despite it being about a trans family. And there's a ton of LGBT stuff and some interesting racial stuff. I mean, all over the place. And they didn't. So for somebody that is in Hollywood, are you involved in secret meetings to engineer the society?
So look, I will admittedly tell you, I am not in the top level meetings with, you know, the Paramount executives and the $150 million movie, you know. But I am involved in quite a bit. And this is what I see, honestly. And, you know, it's going to sound a little bit biased, but the only people I know who are truly making, like, really agenda-driven films that don't show any fairness in the antagonists, the only films that I have seen that truly do that are coming from the extreme religious sector of filmmaking. People who make movies like God's Not Dead and such like that, where it's literally like an Ayn Rand novel, or you know, one of those like classic old philosophical speeches from, you know, the Platonic method, you know, where they're in the cave and they're coming out to have someone prove to someone else on the screen why they're wrong, and that's an agenda-related film, in my opinion. I don't have a problem with that film being made. I don't have a problem with that film going out to audiences who love it and bussing in the people. I don't want to see the movie. I have no problem with that being made from just a purely free speech standpoint.
What an evolved opinion. You're actually, if something comes out you don't like, you won't see it. You're not going to try to burn down the studio, right?
It's totally wonderful. Now, I do see agenda-oriented films from the left. I do see movies that come out and say, like, my goal here is to tell a great story, but at the same time, I want to show you a young, gay, black male protagonist who you may not normally have gotten to know in your life, and normalize him and make him feel at home with you. So that is an agenda, but also in that film, I do feel like most of the time there's a fairness addressed to all the characters, even the antagonist who comes at that person, there's an attempt to be a nuance there. That's the independent filmmaking sphere. That's, you know,
Sure.
what I see. But what I can say directly to anyone who is not in Hollywood, please don't be paranoid that there are a group of people with agendas trying to shove something down your throat. And if you feel that way, just know that it's not dissimilar to that wonderful religious film that you enjoyed, that you were able to experience your agenda being pushed, and you enjoyed it. And then if you didn't want that movie, you could have stayed home.
Yeah.
That's the worst it's ever going to get.
Yeah, well, to me, when people ask me about that,
Yeah.
say, you live in Hollywood, and I'm
Yeah.
like so off. I did take the WB studio tour. That was
Yeah.
pretty good on the little cart, you know, and I went to the commissary. That was very exciting. But my thing is, it's a business, like every other business. They will make things that they believe make money. And I think
100%.
that will almost, I think in probably 99.9% of the cases, that will supersede some sort of political agenda.
I would say 100% of the time.
They want to make money, and that's the way a business is supposed to be.
Yes. I mean, what's really interesting right now is like, you know, a movie like Moonlight wins the Oscar. You know, I love this movie. It's a $1.5 million movie, you know, with a young gay black male protagonist. We don't see movies like this very often. They don't get funded. Now Hollywood, it's just funny to me. It's just like, well, let's make a whole bunch of movies with young gay black males in it because it's money. They're not thinking about that from a social justice perspective. They're thinking about it from a money perspective. Yeah. Likewise, I'm hearing a big call right now from my fan base saying like, where is the independent film about the young Rust Belt family that's making $26,000 a year and the struggles that they face? Why are all the struggle movies you're making right now about the marginalized people, whether it's, you know, a minority or you know, whether it's LGBTQ or something like that? I'm hearing like, what about me? You know, and I think that that's part and parcel with why Trump was elected. You know, there's a lot with that, and I think that there is a valid point to that, and I think that you're going to start to see some stories come out about that.
Yeah, I suspect you might be involved in
one. I'm involved in a lot of
this
stuff, and I hear a lot of this, and it's like, I'm like, yes, this is another element of society that we should represent, and it's good, you know. And I hear that veterans are not represented enough, you know, from the right and stuff like that. So I mean, look, it's all super nuanced in the independent sphere. In the big budget sphere, in my opinion, follow the dollar. That's just what they're doing, and you know, whatever. It's not what I do, but it's fine.
Yeah, at the end of the day, to kind of bring this full circle, would the ultimate answer to this be sort of what you stated at the beginning, that, you know, your grandfather struggled, got your father to be in a better position, got you to be in a better position, so that's truly the American dream. But it sounds like you got a lot of your values out of that and not out of Hollywood. And that's what I always try to tell people. Why would you don't look for this to give you values.
Yeah.
You got to find them somewhere else. It might have something to do with your family or your community or whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, my sphere of people that I work with, we're like, you know, I don't want to overstate this, but like, we're scrappers, you know? Like, I still hang lights on set, and I still cook on my sets for people, and like I made a little black and white movie with me and Sarah Paulson that I made for Netflix for basically no money. And then Netflix pays me a lot of money for those movies. And I make this huge check, and then I take that check and I cut bonus checks to everyone who was on the set with me, including the PAs. And so in that way, I'm actually a communist. So like, you know, I'm all over the map, you know? But like, you know, for those who think Hollywood is just like a greedy system that's all about money making and all this stuff, like, there are ecosystems of wonderful people out here who are, you know, using their power to produce and foster young filmmakers and raise them up, and to say, you know, look, I mean, when I did a movie called Your Sister's Sister with Emily Blunt and Rosemary DeWitt and myself, we made it for really cheaply. We happened to sell it for a lot of money. The three of us made a ton of it. And I went to the girls and I was like, let's give some money back to the crew, and let's give some money back to Seattle and their filmmaking environment. And like, we gave away half of what we made, and it filtered in that community. And this stuff is going on, and you might not see it because you know, shit's loud and incendiary on Twitter from Hollywood, but like, some good-hearted people out here, we care, we're trying to listen, and you know, I would just say, if you're a conservative watching this show, like, please don't think that everyone thinks you're a racist and everyone is yelling that. There are a couple people yelling that, you know? And by the way, there are a couple people yelling at me for being a fucking baby killer because, you know, I want to support any organization that has to do with abortions. You know, I'm getting yelled at too. You're getting yelled at. don't believe that that represents everybody. There's a lot of space in the middle for us to come together.
Yeah. You know how to end a show. That was pretty solid.
I'm going to be real quiet, and then you can just end you can zoom in slowly on my face.
Yeah, you just did your own sort of Fountainhead style speech at the end there.
I think you could even swell up the music score at the end of that.
Listen, man, it was a pleasure talking to you. I suspected we were going to kind of vibe in this way, and I absolutely, if you want some help on this thing,
I would love it, and I'm going to come back to you and hit you hard because it's on tape. You guys saw it. He's going to give.
We don't edit, and they know that, so there's nothing I could do. For more on Mark and his interesting political voyage, check him out on Twitter. It's twitter.com/Mark Duplass.